Today we are joined by David Gallaher. Dave wrote The Green Lantern Convergence tie-in, The Only Living Boy. He is the co-host of For the Love of Comics and is currently working on the new Ghost Recon game. David, how are you?
I'm doing super swell. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on.
I'm so excited about this podcast, by the way.
So are we. We're trying.
Yeah. Trying is the key word.
Yeah, we're like hard-hitting journalists. So I'm terrible at scheduling, and I've been like, life has been just on 11 for the past like 3 months. So we've had 3 interviews this week. So you're gonna get us at our most unhinged, I think, which is awesome.
That is my favorite type of podcast, the unhinged podcasts.
So
you guys should think about changing your name to the Unhinged Podcast.
The Unhinged Super Sons?
The Unhinged Super Sons.
I feel like that would get us into a different genre.
Probably.
And probably on the news, but not like the good kind of news.
All right. So our first question is normally the hardest hitting, like real journalist stuff here. What is your favorite sandwich and why?
Well, my favorite sandwich of all time is a classic grilled cheese sandwich. I love grilled cheese sandwiches and usually eat them with tomato soup. But about 6 years ago, I went vegan. So now I eat vegan grilled cheese sandwiches, and they are so good because there's a certain comfort to a grilled cheese. And I think part of the reason is for 6 years, instead of serving turkey for Thanksgiving, my family had a grilled cheese sandwich buffet, and I have a lot of fondness for those memories. One year, we ended up with 100 pounds of turkey. I have 3 younger brothers. My dad thought he was going to get a turkey from work and wasn't sure, so he went out and bought one, and then ended up getting a turkey from work. And this is pre-cell phone era. My mom didn't think she was going to get a turkey from work and ended up getting one, so we ended up with 4 25-pound turkeys. And then rather than eating 100 pounds of turkey, my parents gave them all to a soup kitchen. My brothers and I volunteered at a soup kitchen that Thanksgiving. And when we came back, we're like, well, what are we going to have? And my brother Ben was like, hey, let's have a grilled cheese sandwich buffet. So that's what we had. We had grilled cheese and tomato soup. And then the next year, it started to get more complicated. Like, then there was a checklist, and you could check whether you wanted bacon or tomato or green chilies, and like the 6 different types of bread: rye, pumpernickel, wheat, white, like a ciabatta, whatever cheeses you wanted, from provolone to Swiss to cheddar to pepper jack. And yeah, it just became a really good savory opportunity to enjoy a grilled cheese sandwich with the family.
That's a great tradition. So
yeah.
I got to follow up on that one. So you went vegan. So you got to be honest. How is the cheese compared to like the cheese from before?
Vegan cheese is amazing. My favorite brand of vegan cheese, and this is not sponsored, but my favorite brand of vegan cheese is Chow. It's Chao. It's like if you added an S, it would look like chaos. But they have 3 different types, and they have like a coconut, peppercorn. They have a tomato cayenne, and they have a classic American. The classic American and their tomato cayenne are indistinguishable from real cheese. Cold and warm, they are absolutely perfect.
Wow, it even comes in slices and everything. Now
Yeah.
I'm looking at pictures of cheese.
And then if I'm doing like cheese and crackers, I'll get like Daya has a jalapeno Havarti that is really, really good, sliced up and served on like Triscuits.
Huh. I feel like everyone I ask this question to, eventually I'm going to have to eat the sandwich. That could be a special.
Right.
I'll have to.
YouTube video.
Well, there are YouTube videos where they talk about like what's the best vegan cheese. But my feeling is, and Follow Your Heart is also a really good brand. I
thought you were telling me to follow my heart.
No, it's the brand is called Follow Your Heart. But yes, Follow Your Heart. Do a vegan grilled cheese special. And to make it comic book themed, you could do it with like those cool like little superhero branded toasty things. So like here's our Watchman toaster grilled cheese sandwich. Here's our Batman toaster grill. Here's our Hello Kitty toaster grilled cheese sandwich.
Who watches my grilled cheese?
I'm just saying. I'm just watches the grilled cheese.
So.
Yeah. So grilled cheese sandwich is my favorite.
Oh, good to know. But now it's going into the database.
I'm just glad everybody so far has had a different favorite sandwich.
Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do when somebody has the same.
So my question for you is, what is the most exotic sandwich you guys have ever had?
Me in my life?
Yeah, exotic. So I'm not talking about like your standard, like I go to Subway and order like an Italian provolone sandwich. Like what's the most exotic sandwich you've had? You can count burgers. So burger is a sandwich. So you can count.
Oh, okay.
So what is your most exotic sandwich you've ever had?
So one time, Mike and I had these gift cards that we got from our Christmas party at work, and they were about to expire. So we went to this place in Philly called, I want to say Whiskey River, but I could be lying. And I knew they had a $26 burger with foie gras on it. So yeah, and I had that, the $26 burger. Not that good. I'll be honest. It was. I don't think it changed. It just wasn't good. Like I didn't really like it. I was like, oh, that was a $26 burger that wasn't that good.
There used to be a place by my house. So this is before I went vegan. They used to have prosciutto bread. And I would cut up prosciutto bread and serve it with pancetta and quail eggs and eat it for breakfast. With a little bit of
prosciutto bread.
Prosciutto bread is bread with prosciutto baked inside of it.
Oh, we might have to cut this interview short. I might have to go to the store. Oh man, that's a real thing. Oh.
Yeah. So you just heat it up, and the prosciutto is nice and tender, and it basically it's like putting bacon in bread. And then you toast it up, you make it really, really nice. I put quail eggs in it. I put a little bit of raclette cheese in it. And then I just broiled the whole thing. Put a little bit of arugula in it, and it had a really nice chew and some really savory tastes.
Oh. Jake, have you had any weird sandwiches?
Dan, you know the answer to that question is no, because I am a picky eater and I'm trying to break that. But, I don't know
if you're more particular than anything.
Yeah.
So, Jake, you want to cue up that next one?
Sure. When did you start reading comics, specifically DC?
That's a really tricky question. So I can tell you when I can tell you a couple of things. Then we can segue into the more complex answer. So Superman was the very first movie I ever saw in my life ever. So it came out when I was 3 years old. My parents took me to see it. The second movie I ever saw was The Fox and the Hound. And the third movie I ever saw was Superman 2. So I was a big Superman fan. And we didn't have a TV growing up because we lived in Hawaii and we moved around a lot. But when we finally got a TV, it was like 1980. And the Super Friends were on. And Adam West Batman was on in reruns. And Superman Black and White George Reeves show was on. And Wonder Woman was on. And The Incredible Hulk was on. And that really... low budget Spider-Man TV show was on, and the Captain America. There were a lot of superhero things. Shazam had a show. There was a lot of 70s, this great era of really cool comic stuff. And then I was about 5. My dad bought me my first comic, and I want to say it was Power Man and Iron Fist. because I thought it was Iron Man and Power Fist, and my other brother got an Iron Man comic, and I was like, well, I get two heroes in this book. And I was really disappointed that it was not Iron Man, because I didn't read really well at the time. But yeah, so that was my first comic, and I had like Lone Ranger action figures and Flash Gordon action figures, whatever. And then we moved to Maryland from Georgia, and every time my brothers and I helped my mom go to Safeway, my mom would buy us comic books. So we would get like the couple of ones that I remember. We got like Green Arrow. So this is like circa 1984. Green Arrow. We got like the Hercules Bob Layton series. We got and that's just like single issues or whatever. So, but I didn't really collect them. I think we got the A-Team comic, Star Wars comics here or there. But the one I really remember, the one that really stuck with me is my parents got me a copy of Batman and the Outsiders. And I was like, oh, right, this is really cool. So I read that for a bit from cover to cover until the pages fell off. And then in 1985, I had a 10th birthday. My parents bought me my first Justice League comic, which I still have. It was Justice League Detroit, and it had Elongated Man and Vixen and Steel and Gypsy and Batman, and yeah, it was great. It was a great issue. But then I didn't really collect comics until about 4 or 5 years later. I mean, like occasionally my parents would get me a copy of Who's Who, and my brothers and I would trace it or whatever to make our own superheroes and our own superhero universes. But then I think right around 1990 is when I really, and then obviously I was familiar with the Super Friends and I loved those characters. But in 1990, when the Flash TV show came out with John Wesley Shipp and Amanda Pays, is when I really got into the Flash. So my comic subscriptions from my local comic shop were like West Coast Avengers, Speedball, Fantastic Four, Captain America, and the Flash. And I read the Flash like Flash was my character. Death of Superman happened, picked up some of those issues. And then in the 90s, like right around 1993 through like 1999, I went whole hog into the DC universe. I was reading Starman. I was reading Flash. I was reading Green Arrow. I was reading Green Lantern with Kyle Rayner. I was reading Robin. I was like really into the DC universe. They had done those Zero issues and Zero Hour, and there was all this stuff going on with Hal Jordan's Parallax. And yeah, so for about 10 years, I was like neck deep into all these crazy DC Comics superheroes and DC Comics lore. And then, I went to work for Marvel Comics for a few years and obviously became a huge Marvel fan. And then eventually went to write for DC Comics. And but that was really sort of my basis. I mean, I still think Starman is one of the greatest DC comics ever created, and obviously I was reading a lot of Vertigo too. I was reading Transmet and Preacher. I was reading Sandman. I was reading Death. I was reading stuff from the Helix line, anything Grant Morrison or Garth Ennis would do. I was totally into that stuff. Goddess, Kill Your Boyfriend, all those books I was totally into.
I actually just got I think the last collection of Sandman Mystery Theater. I'm always happy to hear people talk about that just because I love those books.
Yeah, I love that super pulp Wesley Dobbs kind of storytelling, and I love that stuff. So I was really into that stuff. So that is specifically my DC Comics origin. I was raised on Super Friends. I still watch Super Friends to this day because I think it's crazy good as a show. And we can talk about it more when we get to question 12.
Let me look ahead. Got it. Okay, so the next one, you mentioned a name earlier that is very, very pertinent to this question and probably the discourse we'll get into. So, in your Green Lantern, you show Hal Jordan as a hero, but he's still the antagonist to that story, in my opinion. Was this your idea coming in to write the book?
Yes. So in Green Lantern Convergence Corps, so I wrote 2 issues of Green Lantern Convergence Corps 4 or 5 years ago. I was approached in 2015 2013 or 2014 to write. I had a really good meeting with Dan DiDio in 2013. I wrote a Green Lantern inventory issue in 2015, February of 2015. And then I was with like Arissa and Hal Jordan and stuff that hasn't been published yet, but sitting in one of the drawers at DC. And they liked what I did. And then they were doing Convergence. And I was like, oh, right. And they're like, David, you're going to write Green Lantern Corps. I was like, that sounds awesome. And I was like, oh, well, which Green Lantern can I use? And they're like, you're going to use green. I was like, oh, because they told me the era. They're like, it's going to be 80s. You know, John Stewart was the Green Lantern at the time. I was like, oh, I get to write John Stewart. No, David, your story has to deal with Guy Gardner. I was like, I hate Guy Gardner. Guy Gardner is like my least favorite Green Lantern. He's just such an obnoxious jackass. But as I read about Green Lantern and Guy Gardner, and specifically during this era, he quickly became my favorite Green Lantern. And then I realized, and I kind of didn't really like Hal Jordan to begin with. I always think he's just like this. You can't see my fingers, but I'm like, he's always like this close to being drummed out of the league, the Green Lantern Corps, because he's just like, he's like Captain Kirk of the Green Lanterns. Like, he's always messing up. He's always disobeying orders. He's always doing things that are like super obnoxious, doing just terrible things. But when I was learning about Guy Gardner, it's really interesting. And the quick backstory is that Guy Gardner was going to be Green Lantern had he been closer to Abin Sur when Abin Sur died. That is the story. I don't know if you guys know.
Yeah, I knew that part, but when I was going through this, I actually had to go back to like the wiki page for it. I'm like, I didn't know any of that stuff about him, like the teacher thing.
Yeah, so Guy Gardner was
anything about that.
Guy Gardner was a teacher. And then he was a teacher and gym coach, and that's why. So when we open up our Green Lantern book, he's being a teacher and a coach. So he was a teacher, and he's super good, moral guy, and he subs for Green Lantern for a while. He subs for Hal, and Hal's like, something's wrong with my power battery. I'm gonna let Guy take my power battery and be the de facto Green Lantern to team up with Green Arrow for this mission. In the process of yada yada yada, the power battery explodes when Guy Gardner goes to recharge it. And Guy Gardner's dead. They're like, and Hal's like, I wish that there was something I could do to save him, but Guy Gardner's gone. And you're like, wow, like, what? And the next issue, Hal is like, oh, well, I'm going to try to find Guy's next of kin. He doesn't find Guy's next of kin. Instead, he finds Guy Gardner's girlfriend, Carrie Limbo. And he romances her, sleeps with her, proposes to her, and tries to get married to her. Which is...
Hal Jordan, the big sleaze.
I know. So then what happens is, on their wedding day, Carrie Limbo and Hal Jordan are about to get married. And then suddenly this giant Green Lantern hand comes out and says, I interrupt this wedding. Turns out that it's Guy Gardner, who is in the dimensional world of Quard. Oh, no, he's in the Phantom Zone. Sorry, he's in the Phantom Zone. And he's being tortured by General Zod and the Phantom Zone ghosts as a way to, like, battle Superman. So Zod has control of Guy Gardner. Hal Jordan and Superman go into the Phantom Zone to fight off Zod. Suddenly, in the middle of the fight, Guy Gardner disappears. And Hal's like, it's so weird. Guy just like sort of disappeared and he was being used as a pawn against us. That's weird. And then Hal's like, well, maybe, I think Quard, the dimension that Sinestro's in, is like a pocket dimension, like right next door to the Phantom Zone. So we use a Phantom Zone projector to go into Quard and free Guy Gardner, and everything will be okay. So Hal goes into, Quard and battles Sinestro and battles Guy Gardner. And in the meantime, Guy is lobotomized by Sinestro. Hal brings him back to Earth, and then leaves him as a comatose vegetable. Ditches Carrie Limbo to make Carrie Limbo Guy's caretaker, and then nobody hears from Guy Gardner for years after, until Crisis, where suddenly during Crisis, Guy Gardner is chosen to be the Green Lantern, but he's brought back, and even though they say they fixed all his comatose brain parts, they clearly haven't. And Guy becomes the obnoxious brain-damaged jerk everybody loves. Or loves to hate.
Holy shit. Wow. So before I get to my other questions, something popped into my head. So when you're giving an assignment like this, how did you get a hold of all of those issues? Did you have to track them down yourself? Is there like a resource when you work for DC?
Yeah, so what happens is DC will say, hey, here's the issues that this cover. If you need copies, we'll send you PDFs. So I have PDFs of like issues like 122 to like Crisis in 1985.
Huh. Interesting.
They're huge PDFs, so they're very like, but they really want to get the reference right. So I did a lot to get the reference right. That's why Guy doesn't have his traditional bowler haircut. He has his more traditional 1960s haircut. 1960s, 70s haircut.
And his costume is more Hal Jordan looking.
More uniform.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's talk some shit about Hal Jordan.
Oh man, I hate Hal Jordan.
My favorite thing to talk about.
I don't hate Hal Jordan, but I like Hal Jordan more as a super villain.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on him as Parallax?
I like Hal Jordan as Parallax. I think Hal is, and I mentioned this earlier, I think Hal is literally the worst Green Lantern.
Oh, he's a bad guy. He's just an asshole.
Right. So he's been, I mean, obviously the way he treated Guy was reprehensible. This is debatable, but still really skeevy. He slept with an underage girl.
He did do that. But she like as soon as she like forcibly aged herself up, she was like good to go. But before that, he was like, nah, I can't do it.
Right.
It was
he was romantic. He was in even if he didn't sleep with her, he was intimately involved with her. He was like grooming her. And I find that incredibly skeevy. And even if you could like sort of wipe some of that stuff out, it's still super skeevy. Like, even if he was 26 and she was 16, that's skeevy. Like,
yeah, it's one of those things that kind of gets wiped away by the company. Kind of like how Marvel never wants to address how shitty a person Reed Richards is.
Or the Colossus Kitty Pryde romance.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, that one's a little... It's just weird, like how... Yeah. Things like that don't normally happen in comics anymore, which is cool. I'm fine with keeping that in the past where it belongs.
A lot of things that don't happen anymore, which is good.
I have one more question that popped into my head before we move on to the next question. The first page with the vanity shots of all of those the symbols.
Oh, and the first page of Green Lantern Corps conversions.
Yes.
Okay.
Was that your idea or the artist?
That was totally my idea.
Holy shit, that page is incredible. Like, I was staring at it, I was like, wow. And then the turn that it's not them, but it's like, wow. That is that was not like a punch, like a punch in the face in a good way. How would you describe that?
Well, the reason I did it was for two reasons. One, when you're doing an event, you need to create an opportunity for people to be engaged in the first page. You know, so
it's your hook.
It's my hook, right? So it's a very Jim Shooter kind of philosophy of like, make that first page really sing. And I didn't want to start with jargon from like, oh, remember when we were all trapped under this weird dome? No, I really wanted to if this was the only opportunity I was going to have to write Green Lantern, I really wanted to put in as much stuff in it that I possibly could. So there are like, I thought about like what would excite me as a kid, and like listening to like the Super Friends go, Superman, Batman and Robin, Wonder Woman, the Wonder Twins, Zan and Jaina, Aquaman. Like I really wanted it to have that feel, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's super cheesy, where the kids are like, Hera, help me. Like, Hera, grant me strength. Criminals beware. I mean, it's super cheesy, right? But when you pull back and you see it's kids playing, like that's so in keeping with who Guy is. And then especially that parallel between like on the last panel of that first page, kids like, I'm Green Lantern, and they're like, there can only be one Green Lantern. I'm wearing the shirt. Well, I've got the toy ring, and so really creating that rivalry, setting up that rivalry in the first couple of pages, is a lot of fun. And of course, anytime I can make a Super Friends reference, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Seems reasonable.
I had one. Oh,
and then of course, we have Super Friends references afterwards, where like Guy Gardner is like, hey kid, only one Green Lantern at a time. He's like, you'll have to be somebody else. And then Guy Gardner lists off all these other superheroes. He's like, Hawkman, no. Aquaman, no. Gleek, who's that? Okay.
I read Gleek and it made me smile. I was like, oh, wow. And then I remembered you're a super fan.
Yeah.
One more. Oh, Jim Shooter. Have you ever gotten to meet him?
I've never gotten to meet him. I've seen him at shows, but
you've seen him in like person?
I've seen him in person, yeah, but I've never gotten to meet him.
I know where this is going.
Is he really that tall?
He's pretty tall.
He's actually 6'7" and a smidge. On his official, like they had a Marvel page for him. It says he is 6'7" and a smidge. Number 4, Jake.
Trapped in an elevator, ideal companion, real life acquaintance, celebrity or character.
Well, it's funny. Like one of my favorite people is Vanessa Sheely. She writes a YA comic book called Coravine that I think is a super super duper YA book about a girl who has to wear this helmet. And she's got this. It's like this really like superhero / geek nerd STEM based science fiction project, which I love. And she's also a playwright and an actor, and she's just immensely talented and super funny. So yeah, I mean, we can talk for hours and days, and yeah. So Vanessa Sheely, I think it would be my pick.
Huh.
She's awesome. Check her out on Twitter and Facebook. She's just fantastic talent.
I'll have to find her. Huh. All right. So next question. How was it writing for an event story? Were you handed like guidelines for the story, or they just let you go nuts? Everybody was given like 6 plot points. So like, for example, the first one was that everybody has to not have powers before the story starts. Because you're trapped under the dome and the dome removes all your powers. So that was like point 1. Point 2 was like they have to fight somebody from a rival world. David, your rival world is the Commandee universe. So, okay, great. So I could choose anybody from the Commandee universe and use them. And then it was like the Atomic Knights, Commandee, the rat creatures from Commandee, the Hercules, whatever, like the anti-god, whatever. I could choose whatever I wanted. Fantastic. There has to be an earthquake in the second issue, like fine. And then the message that everybody hears at the end of the first issue, everybody had to use. But other than that, the parameters were pretty straightforward. Just like character doesn't have powers, they end up with powers, problem solved. They have to fight somebody in the second issue. Great, no problem. Easy.
But for me, writing it was the central conflict was always the relationship between Hal and Guy. Like, and when I proposed who I wanted to have fight the characters, I chose Hercules Unbound because I wanted Guy to arm wrestle rather than fight. I wanted him to arm wrestle Hercules. because that was a different way to resolve a fight rather than face like punching them. So, because I used to have the Hercules Unbound action figure from Remco from the mid '80s, and I was like, I had this toy, and I totally want to have him arm wrestle Hercules. So that was cool, and it was a nice like little Sylvester Stallone over the top reference that I was able to throw in. And then I had the Green Lanterns team up, and they fought the Anti-God, which is a character from Hercules Unbound. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was looking at the characters. Wow, these are people I don't know. But as we spoke about yesterday, I don't know a ton about the Commandy world. But
yeah, I only knew Hercules existed. I didn't know about the other characters that you pulled in.
It was a lot of fun. Walt Simonson drew some of those last couple of issues of Hercules Unbound, and they are amazing.
I'll have to go find them. I'll be on that app. Jake?
Werewolves or vampires?
Well, what do you think my answer is going to be?
I'm going to go with vampires.
No, werewolves. Werewolves. I wrote a werewolf Western series for DC Comics called High Moon. So we won the Harvey. It was for DC Comics' Zuda webcomics project, and it ran for 3 years on the DC Comics website. It was a werewolf Western, and it was about a cowboy who was like kind of a werewolf, but kind of not, who went and hunted other werewolves. And it was kind of very fun. It took place in 1890, and it had steam engine golems and undead armies of cavaliers and Jack the Ripper and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and the Hound of the Baskervilles references and Sherlock Holmes stuff. It's you can find it on Comixology.
Huh. And I completely forgot about Zuda. Like, I remember seeing all those ads when I was younger. Wow, holy shit. And the art is beautiful, too.
Yeah, that's Steve Ellis, who drew the Green Lantern book.
Yeah.
And is the artist and illustrator of The Only Living Boy and The Only Living Girl web series comics from Paper Cuts.
We have a question about that, too. So how long did it take you to develop a signature style, both artistically and literally?
Well, my literal signature has been my same signature for about 25 years. I don't like to write out my full name, so I just do a sort of a reverse C to represent the D in my name. I don't put it's like a big weird like half oval for the D, and then I do the same thing for the G, and then just draw a bar through it, and that's my signature. And that's been my signature for like 25 years. So I just one day was trying to be super clever, and I was like, this is what I do. I don't want to have any bars on my name, man. So that's my signature. And people are like, print your name. I'm like, fuck that. I'm sorry, I cursed. Fuck that.
You're good. You're good, man.
Yeah, but it totally did. And then signature, my literary signature is the couple things that I really like to do in my writing. I sort of repeat is that I love really great splash pages for openings. So if you look at Green Lantern Corps, if you look at Dark Star and the Winter Guard, which I did for Marvel, if you look at, I did a book for Moonstone Books called Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar. If you look at that stuff, I love really great, really strong opening pages. So like the opening page for Green Lantern Corps, for the first issue is obviously the superhero icons, right? The second issue opens with Green Lantern being like Hal Jordan being crushed in a very like John Buscema kind of way. You know, Hal is being like squeezed to death, and that's pretty awesome. You know, so you get these really cool, really vivid. I love having those really vivid splash pages that really draw people in. Even in The Only Living Boy, like the first page of that is a kid knocked out on the ground, and you just see his face, and he's like, the worst thing I ever did in my life was to run away. You know, like you're like, whoa, what? And I love that. So I think that's kind of a signature of mine, is like those really, really strong things. And I love action adventure fiction. And I think that's so heavily influenced by my love of old time radio. is like really getting characters to move. I really love characters moving around the environment. So one of the things you won't see a lot in my writing is characters sitting around in an office talking. No, 9 times out of 10, they're moving around the environment because I want to show where they are is a lived-in space, you know? And so, yeah, I would say that within the first 3 years of writing professionally, that was something I really tried to make happen, and then definitely did it in High Moon in terms of like, this is the environment. Let characters walk. Let characters like explore their world. I mean, and yeah, sometimes it's a lot of walking, but if you're able to get a sense of the characters in the space, you're really able to understand more about the environment they're in. And so I always want to make the world they're in part of the backdrop, you know? So even in Green Lantern Corps Convergence, you know, like we're in Guy Gardner's apartment, right? And you see the commander, the General Glory poster, and you see like weightlifting magazines and sports magazines, and you see like all this other stuff that really gives a sense of like, this is the way Guy Gardner lives. And when he goes to visit Carol Ferris, you get like, this is the way Carol Ferris lives. She's in a high-rise apartment. She's drinking herself with whiskey to death. You know, like when you go to see John in Mosaic Construction Company, you know, like John is like building stuff with his architecture background, and you really get a sense of like, this is how the characters live in their space and how they use their backgrounds to really influence their environments, you know?
Yeah.
And that to me was important.
I was going to say, Guy's apartment made me kind of like sad, like,
yeah.
But I think it reflected where he was in his life at that point too.
Well, and there's a very, are you guys familiar with James Garner, the actor? He was in the Rockford Files. He was in Maverick.
Let me see what his face looks like.
The name rings a bell.
Yeah.
Yes. So in the first season,
and who he is. He was in the Notebook.
Right. In the first issue of Green Lantern Corps, I really wanted to make Guy kind of like Jim Rockford from the Rockford Files. So there's even a little, when you see Carrie Limbo's picture in the picture frame, like that's almost a shot for shot reference of the opening sequence of the Rockford Files. Like, this is Jim Rockford, leave a message, you know, and Jim Rockford's got all that same stuff that is the same stuff that Guy Gardner has on his stuff. So I wanted to start with Guy Gardner as kind of this kind of down and out kind of PI vibe. And then by the time we get to issue 2, he is much more of a maverick type. Not literal cowboy hat kind of guy, but really just doesn't care anymore. He's really like, all right, I'm going to be irrationally heroic. I'm going to do the right thing the wrong way, and nobody can stop me. And that is my take on Guy Gardner.
I think that's why he's such a good Green Lantern too.
I think that's fair.
I'm going to do the right thing the wrong way.
Yeah.
So Guy, the way perfect. I described Guy Gardner to Steve Ellis, I was like, Guy Gardner is the type of person who said, if he were a Ghostbuster, for instance, say, Guy, this house is haunted. Guy would be like, all right. And Guy burns down the house. And if you burn down the house isn't haunted anymore. Problem solved. But of course, burning down the house, a haunted house, then all the ghosts are everywhere. And that's a new problem for Guy. But that premise of Guy Gardner as this irrationally heroic guy, it was like, well, it's simple, right? You have a problem. You have a haunted house. If we burn down the house isn't haunted. Problem solved.
Nothing to haunt.
Right.
That is a beautiful way to describe Guy Gardner.
Yeah.
That sounds like every guy who opens up a bar. Like Guy Gardner.
Yes.
It's all tying together. How is it writing for an adult audience compared to a younger audience?
Well, everything I write, I try to write PG-13. So, or PG. So that's sort of where my sensibilities lie. So it's no different. Like the way I wrote Green Lantern Convergence, it isn't that much different than the way I wrote High Moon. and is not that much different than the way I wrote Only Living Boy and The Only Living Girl. Is it fun? Does the story move? Is it approachable to people who have never read comics before? So could you pick it up? Could you understand it from the moment you open up the first page? And can you really get into it? And that's really my take on writing I don't try to write for an adult audience versus young audience, but I do try to write with the idea of like, is this visually interesting? And is the story interesting? And does the story move? Like that to me is what's really important. Comics are a visual medium and the story needs to move. I'm not of the school of trying to make comics look cinematic. Like comics have the biggest, most unlimited budget of anything. Like it doesn't cost $17 billion to make Green Lantern, but it does cost like that much money to make like Avengers Endgame. So I can make something just as beautiful and just as glorious with much less money if I really take the time to make the story approachable and make it engaging and really keep the story moving and keep it like fast and deep. Like I try to write comics that have a little bit of heft to them, rather than writing comics that you can finish in 20 minutes or 10 minutes. Yeah. I really want to write comics that have a story that are approachable and you can be like, yeah, I want to read another David Gallaher story. That's what I want.
Yeah. I like that idea of like kind of keeping it accessible and like making it exciting to keep someone drawn to it.
Right. And I always like to have at least one holy shit moment per comic.
I mean, that's a good thing to live by. I try to have one holy shit moment a day.
Right. Where you're like, holy shit. Like you open up that page, with my favorite holy shit moment of Green Lantern 2, for instance, Convergence 2, is where where Hercules throws Guy Gardner in his indestructible armor, and Guy Gardner is singing the Mighty Mouse theme song.
Yeah. I screenshotted that on my phone. I was like, yes. That was amazing.
To save the day. And you're like, ouch, 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 ouch. Like that to me is like, that's fun. That's so ludicrous. But it is totally in keeping with this irrationally heroic guy who's like super cocky, super self-assured, but also like really has really terrible PTSD, and panic attacks. Like here's this guy who's like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm probably not the best guy. I'm probably not the guy you want to have doing this, but I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do. Now I'm going to totally botch it, but it'll be a lot of fun. And it was so fun. Speaking of botching, it was so fun to have like Jon Stewart use a boxing glove arrow in issue 2 of like Green Lantern Corps Convergence. It's just fun to put that stuff in and be ludicrous.
Okay, so you and I actually crossed paths on the internet, on the Twitters, when you made that incredible thread with all of the heroes and villains and everything that hasn't appeared in comics, but in other media. So you did one
the my non-canon character list.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to pick one of those characters from your DC list to write about tomorrow, who are you picking?
Well, let me give a little bit of background about that list, and then I will tell you. So I started that list because I listened to a lot of old time radio, and I was listening to the old Superman radio series. Mm-hmm. And in the old Superman radio series, there are dozens and dozens of characters who are mentioned that you never actually visually see. And I was falling asleep one night and I thought that there was a character called the Laughter. And I was like, that sounds like the coolest name. Why have we not seen the Laughter battling Superman in the comics? And then his name is actually the Laugher. But still, like, what happens in the radio series is that the Laugher, a woman named the Scarlet Widow, a guy called the Vulture, and this guy called Der Teufel all found kryptonite. They create kryptonite in the radio series, because that's where Kryptonite debuted, along with Jimmy Olsen and Perry White. So all these things debuted in the radio series, but you've never seen these characters cross over. And then they end up using Kryptonite to create a rival Superman called the Atom Man in like the longest, most epic Superman radio series ever. And the Atom Man was inspired the Nuclear Man in Superman 4 Quest for Peace.
Huh.
So you have the Atom Man and you have all these other characters. And you're like, wow, this sounds amazing. There's no laugher. Okay. And then I went back and I thought about, and I love the Super Friends, and I thought about all these characters who had never appeared before. And I run a semi-monthly superheroes role-playing game where we play like either Marvel superheroes or we play DC superheroes. And I was like, it'd be really great is if I made a list of all these characters who had never appeared before in the comics, and like my players wouldn't necessarily know who they were. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So then in the process of like categorizing all of them, I was like, there's like over 300 of these characters, from like Gus Gorman, who was in Superman 3, to Phantasm, who was just announced was going to be in Catwoman Batman in January, which is super excited. Awesome. So Phantasm was originally going to be my choice. But anyway, there's over 300 of these characters, and some of them are super minor and some of them are significant. And it's amazing to me to not see any of them. I think the two that I would choose to write, if I had the opportunity to write them, would be Gus Gorman from Superman 3, who I secretly believe is Brainiac, and Red X from the Teen Titans cartoon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, all right. Those are solid answers. And you said do you play tabletop for the...
Yeah, we play tabletop. We use the Marvel TSR phase rip rules, but like it's tabletop. So everybody has their own characters. So like ran a Marvel game for like 3 years where everybody played members of the Avengers. And like 2 years ago for my birthday, I did an X-Men game. And every Christmas, I do a Young Justice game where people play members of Young Justice. This year, they fought the Music Meister, and the arch enemy was Christmas music. So so basically, every time they're at a Christmas parade, and every time a Christmas song played, the audience everyone in the crowd would start to panic and like start to riot and stuff, and then players had to figure out what it was. And then last year they fought the Riddler, who left Christmas-based riddles, and the year before that they fought the Legion of Doom in the future for Christmas. So yeah, and then this year, just like on the 1st of June, we had players playing the Justice League. So we had Red Tornado, Wally West Flash, Zatanna, Hal Jordan, and Darla Dudley from Shazam, all as the Justice League, and they battled 54 of the characters from that list. Wow. So and the arch enemy was Aya from the Green Lantern Corps. The Aya Monitor from the Green Lantern cartoon, who was going to sacrifice all of these characters to create this ritual to bring Razor back from another dimension. And then the whole premise of the game was like, what would you do for love? And so, but yeah, and all the characters were, it wasn't just that they were all 52 of these characters that these players had never seen. They were the Royal Flush Gang, but they were the entire deck. So, and the players had to, in the course of the game, figure out like who were the spades, and the spades were like all the Kryptonians, and who were the clubs, and who were the hearts, and yeah. So it was a very intense game, and the players like eventually won the day and convinced Aya to not sacrifice all of these characters. But yeah, it was intense.
We play one. My friends and I play a Marvel one every week, and I am currently playing Adam X the Extreme. So,
that's awesome. See, what a great! I love that stuff.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. Yeah, so that's what we do, and it's a lot of fun. It's just a tremendous amount of fun to have this to have this really great game of people who are really interested in playing superhero games. So anyway, that's what originally the list became. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I could literally build this as a DC comic miniseries, like imagine like all these characters who exist in like this liminal space who are like from all these other dimensions just fighting to see whether or not that they were worthy of being in the main DC universe. Imagine Gus Gorman and Otis Graves and Orville Gump and Mal Havoc and Sculpin and Phantasm and Zai Kree, who is a General Zod knockoff, like all fighting to be like, I want to be in the main DC universe. Like, imagine that. I mean, like, yeah. So anyway.
All right. Jake?
If you had to fight one person in DCU, who you brawling with?
Well, do I have powers?
Yeah. You can have powers for this experiment.
So if I didn't have powers, it would be Marvin Harris. Do you guys know who Marvin Harris is?
Yeah.
Marvin from the Super Friends.
Yeah. Marvin.
Who hung out. Marvin. That's who.
He's just got like the shield, but with the M inside of it.
Right. He can he can levitate.
Like...
Yeah, Wendy and Marvin. I would beat up Marvin Harris. Forget it.
Come here, nerd.
I feel like that happened a lot to the Young Justice version of him.
Yeah. I would totally beat up Marvin. But if I had powers, depending on the scale of my powers, I think I could probably go toe to toe with Green Arrow.
That's who you want to fight?
Yeah, if I had powers, I would fight Green Arrow.
What did he do to you? Why do you want to fight him?
He's a bad guy.
Green Arrow has a lot of versatility.
Okay.
And so because, look, so the Flash is obviously super fast, probably kick my ass. Superman probably kick my ass, even with powers, right? But if I beat Green Lantern, I can take all his stuff. And Green Arrow's probably got a kryptonite arrow. He's probably got a net arrow, probably got a putty arrow, probably got a sonic arrow, probably got a flare arrow, probably got a handcuff arrow and a boxing glove arrow. There's some versatility in beating up Green Lantern so that I can take Green Arrow, so I can take his stuff. And like, if I'm smart, do you guys ever read that issue where Connor Hawke as the Green Arrow battles the Key in the Justice League Watchtower?
I think I have, but it's been a while.
Is it
all the
90s?
It's the 90s. All the Justice League are beaten except for Connor Hawke, and he's got So I would totally do that same thing. Be like, hey, man.
So realistically, you just want to rob Green Arrow.
Yes.
Okay. You could have just come out and said it. You didn't have to.
Well, you said, who am I brawling with? And I'm brawling with him so I could take some of his versatility.
It's realistically just a mugging at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I could do it while he's sleeping too.
You just get super
and it doesn't really have to be Green Arrow. I mean, I could rob Red Arrow or Artemis.
Yeah, I feel like Red Arrow. I don't want to go to his house. Well, it would actually be pretty easy to rob him right now because he's dead. So just go in. No one's going to stop you.
I mean, at another point, there's going to be a lot of things you take as quiver. There's going to be a lot of things you can't get like past like a police checkpoint.
Yeah. Right. Well, I don't need a police checkpoint if I've beaten up Green Arrow because I've got a boxing glove arrow and handcuff arrows.
Handcuff, right?
So you're writing a video game.
And I've got a cable arrow to escape.
You
propeller
really
arrow
thought this through, actually.
I'm just saying. You watch
mugging of Green Arrow.
You watch 7 seasons of Arrow Man, and you're like, you know what all his stuff is.
Shipping. His things are shipping.
Yes.
So you're writing Ghost Recon.
Yes.
How is it writing a video game compared to a comic? Like the scale of the whole thing.
The scale is vastly different. Oh my goodness. So there are a few things I can't talk about because they're under NDA. Mm-hmm. But I love working on Ghost Recon Breakpoint because there's the opportunity is that there's a sense of depth to the game that there isn't in comics. I mean, because think about it. Like, we're talking about a game that has got like over 100 hours of play. So you're thinking about bios for every single character. So you're thinking about like, well, what's the bartender's name? What's the janitor's name? Like, what is their story? Why are they here in this situation? Will they become important later on? Where were they born? Were they born in Maryland? Were they born in Hawaii? What brings them to the setting that we're in? And how do they help the main character? And ultimately, because everybody's the hero of their own story, what is it that they really want out of life? So you're thinking about all these different narrative layers in a way that I don't generally think about as deeply when I'm writing a comic. Mm-hmm. I sometimes think about like, well, how's this character serve the scene? Rather than like, oh my goodness, no, what is this character's cradle to the grave story?
That's a lot. I have a question that piggybacks off of the Ghost Recon topic. Did you ever get to meet that dog that was on the EA stage? Was on the stage.
That's John Barenthal's dog. That was John Barenthal's dog. No, everybody but we talked about it. That just happened this week. But John, so I have not. But everybody was like that. John Barenthal's dog like stole the show.
Yeah, it was amazing.
But then everybody was like, "We need pit bulls in our game," and we're like, "Yes, we need more dogs in this game." So that was literally our call yesterday. It was like, "Hey, how was John Barenthal's dog? Everybody loved John Barenthal's dog." We're like, "We need more dogs in Ghost Recon." Ghost Recon dog points.
That makes me so excited. Jake and I played the first one quite a bit.
Well, we played the last one.
Wildlands
game. Yeah,
Wildlands.
Yeah, I did some the DLC for that.
Oh. I'm so excited to pick this new one up and be like, I've talked to the writer. No big deal.
Well, I'm one of several writers, so I don't want to take all the credit. But
I'm gonna take all the credit for you. It's fine.
But it was a tremendous amount of fun because I've been working on the game now for about a year, a little more than a year, and it's been a lot of fun to be able to you can totally tell my sense of humor when you're reading it. You're like, that seems like a David Gallaher joke. That seems like something David Gallaher would say. Is that somebody that David Gallaher knows in as one of the characters? You don't know. But it's a lot of fun to sort of play with that and play in that space and work on those characters. And I'm super stoked about it. It comes out October 4th, and I'm tremendously proud about it. And it looks awesome. Looks awesome. And it looks super cool to see your characters that you created a whole cloth being like rendered as something. You're like, oh, whoa, I wrote that. People are going to play that. That's crazy to me.
I'm very excited for it.
Same.
Jake?
Guilty pleasure.
The Super Friends and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Oh, hell yeah.
So my favorite season of Super Friends is the most bizarre one. So Super Friends ran for several seasons, and obviously they started super goofy with Wendy and Marvin and some really environmentally themed based stories in 1973, and the show ran through 1985, 1986 with Cyborg and the death of Superman and Batman's first animated origin on TV ever. That's all really cool stuff. But my favorite season is the season called The World's Greatest Super Friends. It's 8 episodes. So it's a super short season. And rather than battling Lex Luthor, no, they do battle Lex Luthor in one season, but rather than battling the Legion of Doom or Sinestro or whatever, Darkseid or whatever, they battle, for the most part, with the exception of one episode, mythological and fairy tale based creatures.
Ooh.
So the first episode is a Lex Luthor episode. It's like Lex Luthor Strikes Back. Lex Luthor, very 1978 Superman movie, has a little guy named Orville Gump, kind of like Otis Graves, who's his little hench person. And Lex Luthor makes a deal with creatures of the sun to destroy Superman. And all these fire creatures take over the earth, and it's super scary.
What season is it?
It's called The World's Greatest Super Friends. I want to say it's 1978.
I think all of them are on the DC Universe app.
They're all on the DC Universe app. It's got the scariest opening of any Super Friends opening. So it opens up. So the credits roll. You know, it's the world's greatest Super Friends and Superman, right? Batman and Robin, Wonder Woman and Aquaman, the Wonder Twins, Zan and Jaina. And you watch it and you're like, okay, cool. So you introduce the heroes. Then you see a UFO fly by. And you're like, what? UFO is going to fly by and destroy the Earth. Then you see this albino kind of Doctor Strange-like character, very Jack Kirby designs, shooting lasers from his hand. And then you see like a lava creature, robot thing emerging from the lava with its eyes all glowing. And then you see like this demonic, like golem-like Balrog thing, like roaring. And then you see like skeleton pirates shooting laser beams, and Batman gets trapped in a spider web with a giant spider, and Robin throws his batarang and cuts Batman out. And you're like, wow, that's crazy. And then as it's ending, you're like, whoa, skeleton pirates and crazy albino mages and whatever. Then you see this gigantic, like, kaiju monster robot thing emerging really, really big in the sky. And you're like, what the hell is that? And then Batman swings down from his cable and the world, you know, and it's crazy. It's really dark opening. And watching that opening. So watch that opening. Oh, and the shadow creatures drop out with no faces. And they just have like, they look like cavity creeps. It's crazy. You watch that opening and you're like, if you're a 5-year-old kid watching the show, that is scary to think that the world is only the world's greatest Super Friend. So it's not like Hal Jordan. It's not Flash. It's the world's greatest. This is it. This is it. Everything after that is the world's mediocre Super Friends. You know, so no El Dorado, no Rima, the Jungle Girl, no Hawkman, no Hawkwoman. This is it. This is the world's greatest Super Friends. If they don't stop the problem, the world is screwed. You know, so you've got 7 heroes. All right, 7 heroes have to defeat all this stuff. And you're like, wow, to live in a world like that and be a civilian in a world like that where like our hope's based on these 7 characters, man. And 2 of them are goofball Wonder Twins with their space monkey Gleek. And this is us. That's scary. If you guys watch the opening, it's on YouTube. If you YouTube that opening, you're going to be like, what? And of all the openings, it is the most demonic. It's the most scary. Oh, there's a crude oil monster. Yeah, it's crazy.
They really went for it.
They really went for it. So that is my favorite. That's the most grotesque opening. But that's the same sensibility. If you watch the 30 seconds of the Super Friends opening, that's the same sort of spirit of adventure and menace that I try to bring to the Only Living Boy and the Only Living Girl. That same sort of like, okay, it's going to be okay because we've got these heroes to take care of us, but this is scary stuff. The rest of the season, they battle. There's an Alibaba kind of space Sinbad story with the Aladdin, which is fine. There is the one with Captain Nemo, and he has a Batman android, and the bottled city of Kandor shows up, and the Super Friends are, the Fortress of Solitude is in it, and that one's good. There's a weird one where they're trapped in the world of Oz, and that one's a little freaky.
I've seen pictures of that one.
That one's super freaky. So, and they're all like, they all have varying levels of quality, but they're all like really good. There's one where they're on a planet that is like Camelot called Camelon, where Superman becomes this evil Black Knight character. That's all fun stuff. But the best episode in that batch, the episode I watched consistently more than any of the other ones, was influenced and designed by Jack Kirby, and it's Super Friends Meet Frankenstein. So in it, Frankenstein builds a monster, and he then he kidnaps the Super Friends and abuses the monster with all the Super Friends' powers. So you get this weird composite Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Frankenstein monster called the Super Monster. And Robin is in that episode. The Wonder Twins aren't in it at all. And Aquaman isn't in it either. But you've got the Super Monster who's destroying the world. You know, he's lifting up buildings, he's breaking dams, whatever. Robin takes the rest of the Super Friends, brings them to the Science Center drains what's left of the Super Friends' powers, becomes super powered Robin with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman's powers, and battles the super monster. Robin like steps into this machine. He grows taller. He's like, I am as strong as Superman. And he has all Batman's intelligence and Wonder Woman's magic lasso telepathy, and it's crazy. It's a really good episode.
We've been talking about Super Friends a lot. Have you gotten a chance to read the new Wonder Twins series at all?
I have. I've read like the first 2 or 3 issues, and I really enjoy it a lot. So
yeah,
I think Mark Russell's just talented, super talented, and Stephen Byrne they're just super talented guys. So I'm excited about that, and it got extended past it just got renewed.
Yeah.
I guess
It's been a fantastic week for DC Comics after last week and a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So, and then I love Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which is, I have a crush on Firestar from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. So that's also a guilty pleasure show.
My favorite part of that show is in the theme song where they have the picture of the Hulk in their house.
Yeah. And it turns over to be a supercomputer, which I love.
Yeah. But think about that. Like one of your friends, like you just have a big poster of him on the wall, like somebody you work with. Like one of your coworkers, you like got a poster of him and slapped it up on your apartment wall.
Yeah,
it's fine, but it's just like, why did you do that, Spidey? You really like Hulk?
Yeah, he really likes the Hulk. But maybe any number of things could happen. It could be any number of reasons why. It could be because they teamed up in one of the episodes.
Yeah, I specifically remember the X-Men episode.
There's 2 X-Men episodes.
I want to say Arcade is in it.
Nope, it's Siberiad.
Yes, there you go. And Cyclops has the terrible voice.
Oh yeah, but he blasts through. He can't blast through adamantium, so he burns through it.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of controversy.
If I can't blast through, I'll burn through. My favorite episode is 7 Little Superheroes, which I have watched on repeat over and over again. It's got Captain America, Doctor Strange, Namor, and Shauna the Jungle Girl.
Huh. I have to go back. I want to go back and watch that.
It's got the Chameleon in it, and he does it like a very he does it in a very evil kind of shape-shifty and then there were none Agatha Christie style 7 little superheroes want to know the score. The Iceman will be melted, and then there will be 4. And in that episode, Namor, Submariner's in it. He's awesome, but he's he gets his ass kicked a little bit, and he's he goes into this giant mansion, Wolf Mansion, and he's in there, and he's they're checking out all these rooms to figure out where the Chameleon is, and he's wow, a swimming pool, just what I need to revive my strength. And he jumps into the pool, and he's that's not water. It's alcohol, dropping the moisture from my body. And then the pool sets on fire. And you're what?
Just a big pool of vodka. Yeah. Hop on in.
That seems like something Dan would try, though.
Well, Dan is the Submariner, which is who we were talking about.
Whoa. My favorite is Aquaman, so I have to be negative Submariner.
We were talking about how he appeared in 7 Little Superheroes, the episode of Spider-Man's Amazing Friends, and jumped into a pool of.
I've actually seen that episode.
He jumps into a pool of alcohol. And he's that's not water, it's alcohol. I love that.
Getting turned. Okay, next up. What is your favorite comic kiss?
That would be Firestar and Marvel Boy from New Warriors 26.
Hey.
Marvel Boy had just been arrested for murdering his dad. And the New Warriors go to be this is unfair. So they stop him. They literally stop the guardsmen as they're transporting him to the vault to break him out of jail. And then he and Firestar share a nice little kiss. And it's the best. And you wait 20, I was waiting 26 issues for them to make out. 2 years. 2 years for them to make out. What are your favorite comic book kisses?
Ooh.
Oh shit. Okay. I think it's either it's a Brightest Day when Aquaman and Mera kiss after he's been dead for so long. It's that, Shatterstar and Richter, from is X Factor, and I got another one. I really should have had an answer for this. I can't ask somebody this if I don't have an answer. Jake, you got one?
No, I don't.
Really? Not at all?
Yeah, I can't even think of one.
Would it be Batman kissing Catwoman?
Oh, that entire lead up to 50, like the date issue.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's a kiss, but it.
I want to see Batman.
I just said it felt like it was kissing me, but the Superman, Batman, Catwoman, Lois Lane date is maybe one of my favorite comics of all time.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
So there you go. You guys have answers to that.
I'm gonna have to think about this more. This is gonna put me on a path.
Okay, I need to pull up one of my favorite relationship-y issues, and I gotta look through it. But I guess we'll get on to the next question. Any DC character you'd like to write a comic book or show or whatever for?
You know, I was thinking about this a lot. I would really like to write Guy Gardner as an ongoing series. I would have so much fun with that. Steve Ellis and I talk about it, pitching it all the time, like all the time. I have this really fun Hawk Girl story I want to tell. I would, and I never used to really want to write the Justice League, but now I kind of do. And my favorite superhero is Superman. So I totally want to do, take a stab at some of that stuff. Like, I know a lot of people really love Batman, and I don't know if I have a lot of interest in writing Batman, but something like Young Justice or, like I said, a Guy Gardner story, like Guy Gardner and the Warriors, and he has a ragtag team, and it's like part Firefly, part like outer space Western. That could be a lot of fun.
I would read any of those, especially because you said Hawk Girl and not Hawk Man, because that is my answer for the fight. If I had to fight one character in the DC universe, it's Hawkman, and I'm going all out. Like, I'm hitting him with that mace until all that convoluted backstory bullshit is mush.
There's one other story I've wanted to write for like I want to say almost 10 years now. Not quite. But for about the last 10 years, I've wanted to do the Legion of Doom as the Legion of Superheroes. So the basic premise is, how far would you go to escape your past? So the Legion of Doom is like, hey, superheroes are in the present, but if we go so far to the future where they're dead and take over, we'll be the rulers of the future. But then the central premise is they beat up the Legion of Superheroes and they become the new Legion. The Legion of Doom is the Legion of the future. But then Sun Eater comes to destroy the world. So it's sort of like very necessary evil. So like an evil greater than them is threatening everything that they have now taken over and spent so long to sort of deal with. So that would be kind of a fun little Legion of Doom as the Legion of Superheroes kind of high concept story. Kind of like a reverse Thunderbolts.
Yeah. Huh. So the whole premise of our show is to be able to make DC Comics a little bit more accessible for new readers and old readers alike. If you had to take one story or one issue of DC Comics and hand it to somebody to get them into the universe, what would it be?
Can I choose two?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first one is one of the very first Flash stories I ever read was in Secret Origins. I'm going to say it was Secret Origins Annual 2. It was the issue of the Flash where it was like all the Flashes. So it was a Barry Allen story, a Jay Garrick story, and a Wally West story. And the first story is called The Unforgiving Minute. It's a Wally West story where he talks to his therapist. And he recounts, it's all framed within the Rudyard Kipling poem, the If. Are you guys familiar with that poem at all?
I am. That is a very... I have to read this issue now.
Yeah, so that is probably, and it's a recap about where Wally is, but it's also it's a recap of where Wally is, but it's also a really nice introduction into like the imposter syndrome he has.
Mm-hmm.
And this is written in the 80s before people really talked about imposter syndrome. So it was a really nice, William Mesner Loebs wrote the issue, and it's just incredibly powerful. So I love that. I love that issue. So if I were to give people an opportunity to really look at, like, this is everything that you need to know about the Flash, and anything you really need to know about these characters, I think that's great. And the poem is like, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated but don't give way to hating, and if you don't look too good nor talk too wise, so it's all about if you can dream but not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim. Like, it's a very, very powerful poem about like growing up and finding maturity, and all that stuff is really just incredibly impactful.
And
the last stanza is like, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. So it's very much like that powerful reflection on who Wally is, and it's about failure, and it's about overcoming adversity, and it just really speaks to me. It spoke to me as a kid when I read it 30 years ago, but it speaks to me as an adult too, where I'm really thinking about what it means to be, like, even as an adult, like what it means to be a hero, what it means to be a man. I think that's a really powerful story. The other issue that I love is it's just called Free Fall in Scarlet. It's a Flash issue. I want to say it's 54. I'll find out in a second. I always can tell you what the name of the issue is. Scarlet. Maybe it's 57. Yeah, it's 54. Look at that. I'm so smart. So Free Fall in Scarlet, and in it, Flash is in an airplane, and there's a terrorist attack, and the roof of the airplane is blown open by the terrorists, and Flash, who does not fly, jumps after the woman. Flash can't fly. He hasn't eaten on this flight at all, so he doesn't have like a lot of good powers, and he just goes after the woman, and that's like true heroism to me. Like that, you don't know what's going to happen, and so it's a really powerful, because Flash at this time wasn't like as badass as he is now. His powers were much more unstable and stuff, and that's really interesting. Superheroes as rescue workers and rescue fiction really has a lot of appeal to me. Like even in the Green Lantern stuff, where like Hercules and Jennifer are like, we're going to go rescue some people, and even at the end of that issue 2, Guy Gardner's like, well, what do we do now? And Guy's like, we're going to rescue some people, man. We're going to rescue people. That's what we do. We're superheroes. That to me is important.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot.
So those 2 issues in particular, I think, really speak to my brand of heroism.
Okay. So our last question is something we always ask, and it's, is there anything you always want to be asked or talk about in an interview or podcast that people normally ask?
Well, I mean, people don't usually ask me why I'm so handsome. I don't think a single podcaster has asked me that. David, why are you so devilishly handsome? What's it like to be the most handsome man in the world? Like, never ask. So, yeah, I would. Those are things I would like to be asked.
So, David, why are you so devilishly handsome?
Well, I'd like to thank my parents for their incredibly good genes and strong vegan living and exercise.
Strong vegan living. So, is there anything we should be on the lookout for from you in the near future?
Well, yeah. So just last year, we released the Only Living Boy omnibus. So we didn't talk about it a lot during the show, but if you really like strong adventure fiction and got nieces and nephews and kids and are really into like stories that are similar to like Thunder the Barbarian or John Carter on Mars or Flash Gordon or The Jungle Book or The Island of Dr. Moreau or even Bridge to Terabithia, if you like that strong kind of like awesome adventure fiction, pick up the book. It's in the style or the spirit of Commandy, or in the spirit of like Paul Pope's Battling Boy, or even to a degree a little bit of Adventure Time. If you like that stuff and you're like, I really want to see heroes fight monsters and a giant flying insect city and then a giant weird underwater cavern with weird rat creatures and mad scientists, that's the book for you. Our follow-up companion series to that, The Only Living Girl, Volume 1, just came out a couple weeks ago and is available in comic book stores, Target, Amazon, your local area bookstore, or library. And Ghost Point Recon comes out October 4th.
Very excited to see all those things.
Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Ghost Recon Breakpoint.
Where can we find you online?
I'm at David Gallaher on Twitter, and then I've also got a Facebook page. I think it's David Gallaher Writer.
And you can find us, Super Sons, at DC Super Sons on the Twitter. You can find us online at supersonspod.com. And if you like the show and want to continue helping support us, go to patreon.com/supersons. You get access to bonus episodes, ramblings, and a bunch of other stuff. And you get to help support us do cool things. So, David, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. And I have a podcast too that I'm a co-host of. For the Love of Comics podcast, which I didn't mention. But
where can we find that?
It's at For the Love of Comics on Twitter, and super easy to find us.
All right. So we will see you in 2 weeks.